Keeping a sharp eye on Rocket Man, the U.S. reportedly flying 4 spy planes over the Korean peninsula in the last couple of days. This after Kim Jong-un's threat of a dangerous, quote, Christmas gift. Here now is Fox News national security and foreign policy analyst Walid Phares with more on this. First of all, what's going on inside of North Korea right now, Walid?
That's a big question. Actually, as a matter of fact, if we put China on the side, Russia on the side, the administration policy towards North Korea on the side, there is something happening inside North Korea which is prompting and pushing Chairman Kim.
What is it?
To do what he's doing. Two things that we are getting information about. Very early information. Number one, somehow information about the situation in South Korea, not the military one, the economic one, the social one, educational one, is slowly coming into North Korea. We don't know how, who's getting that information. Somehow they figured it out, and they are comparing the situation in the north to the south, and that is putting a lot of pressure on Chairman Kim. The second one, it looks like we've heard about some spiritual, quote-unquote, challenges, meaning people who are now committed to another ideology than communism. All of these, we don't see them in the international scenery, but he does, and he's concerned that this could challenge him if he does not bring food to the table in North Korea.
Yeah, and it's just so sad and important for that situation, the people that are living there. But I wanted to ask more about President Trump and the language that's been used. He went from, Rocket Man, Fire and Fury, to we fell in love, and then you have North Korea, threatening with a gift. And we know how vocal the president could be and so unpredictable, and yet how come he hasn't really responded too much? Is it because it's that dire of a threat that it's best to not play with fire, literally? Is that why?
Basically, I am sure, and others could confirm, that there is a track of talks and negotiations between the administration, the upper scale of the administration, and North Korea. And most likely, the return from North Korea is that, oh, we have to do this, so we're not really engaging in threatening behavior. They do it usually. I mean, communist regimes do that. So he doesn't want to, threaten his policy. But at one point, the president will act not on speeches and statements, but actual reports by our military, by our intelligence. So if he feels that something is really going wrong based on what he gets from our, Pentagon or agencies, then he'll act differently.
But Walid, the president has suspended a lot of those those so-called war games with South Korea. Is that one of the reasons, perhaps, that North Korea has felt more emboldened to taunt the president with these Christmas Day threats?
2 points. Number one, North Korea coordinates with China. That's the big piece of the whole equation. I mean, they would not move neither in sending a missile or mobilizing without coordination. It doesn't have to be very, in the light of day. But second, basically, the reason for why Chairman Kim a couple of years ago decided to engage with us is that he saw a huge task force coming around North Korea, and he coordinated with the Chinese as to what is going on, and they told him, you'd better speak with the United States and with its president. I think now they changed their posture because they want something from us faster.
Well, Walid, this is Gary Kalpam. At the end of this road, do we really believe this guy is really going to get rid of his nuclear ambitions? I mean, we've been hearing this forever. Isn't this like one of the great snow jobs out there? I want your opinion on that.
Look, my direct opinion, it may not have everybody happy with what I have to say. I don't think that this leader is going to unilaterally, remit all his nuclear weapons to an international, organization. He's not going to do it. But there are circumstances, if we know what we're doing, especially if we connect with what's happening inside North Korea, he may be compelled to do so. But on his own, just because of a tweet or just because he appears on TV, I don't think so.
Okay, I just want to move over to the Middle East for a second, if I can, because there's some news on what's going on in Syria. The president tweeting out today, Russia, Syria, and Iran are killing or on their way to killing thousands of innocent civilians in Idlib province. Don't do it. Turkey is working hard to change this carnage. What's going on here, the president asks. Well, Walid, what do you think is going on?
Look, this is the last province controlled by the opposition to the Assad regime, opposition which is backed by Turkey. And here's the problem. Those millions or hundreds of thousands of civilians now are pressed by Assad and the Russians and the Iranians, and Turkey precisely is not doing anything to defend them. So is it an indirect message to Turkey, hey, Turkey, you need to do what you have to do and protect those civilians, otherwise we're going to see another humanitarian catastrophe. And guess what? The concern are the refugees, not just going into Turkey, but all the way to Europe.
Walid, it's Carol Roth. What do you think about President Trump's tactic about Twitter diplomacy? Do you think that this is an effective strategy and tactic for him?
Look, the Twitter world doesn't operate by itself. So there are conversations on Twitter, especially the president's very good at that. But there need to be actions on the ground. For example, when through tweets there was an encouragement to the demonstrations in Iraq, or Secretary Pompeo also followed suit with Iran and Lebanon, but there need to be actions on the ground. Tweets alone can do something, but not everything.
Not everything, that's for sure. Well, thank you, Walid. We appreciate it. Happy New Year if I don't speak to you before then.